Hey everybody, let's go on an adventure today. Hop on board the mouth dancing train with your engineer Young. For this episode, I wanted to focus on things that I would like to see changed about the world, things that I think would improve the world. It's kind of a themed episode, if you will. I'd say the theme song could be that David Bowie song, Changes. Time to face the strange changes. First change I'd like to see is getting rid of time zones. I think they cause more problems than they solve. If you've ever traveled to another part of the world, you've probably had to deal with jet lag, right? And that comes from the times being different. Back home where you come from, it's like 3 o'clock, and then when you land, it's 8 o'clock back home, but where you just landed, it's like 7 o'clock in the morning, and that throws you off. And that's what causes jet lag, is you get confused. Your body's so confused by the time difference. So I guess we have different time zones because we want to distinguish ourselves from one another, right? It's like, well, where I'm from, it's 3 a.m., and where you're at, it's like 9 p.m. So that makes us unique in our own special way. I don't think we really need to do that anymore. I think that people understand that there are differences. And, we could respect each other's differences without having to live in different time zones. Just think about how much simpler everything would be if you didn't have to figure out, oh, what time is it over there? Because over here it's this time. And so when you're setting up a meeting or you want to call your friends or loved ones, or what if you're like in a long distance relationship with someone and you want to arrange to have phone calls or FaceTime each other, then you don't have to figure out all this weird time difference stuff. And I think that it would help improve efficiency too, because sometimes I bet a lot of things fall through the cracks because people get mixed up about the time differences. And it's also weird to think, like I could be asleep, right? And then someone on the other side of the world is wide awake because in their time zone, it's the daytime, right? And that's the time they're supposed to be up and doing things. That kind of freaks me out thinking about that. It kind of makes me nervous, actually. Like they could be doing stuff, like really weird stuff that I'm just totally unaware of because I'm sleeping, And I'm sure they feel the same exact way. I'm wide awake, I'm up and about, I'm doing work, running errands, enjoying my hobbies or whatever, and they're in bed sleeping. That probably freaks them out too. Also, have you ever been watching the Super Bowl? Like, I'm watching it from Seattle, and let's say someone in New York is watching it. But over there, it's like 8 p.m., and where I'm at, it's 5 p.m. The sun is still out, but over there, the sun is about to set. That's kind of weird. If you think about it, it's hard to get in harmony with other people that you in your country. Your own countrymen, you could feel alienated from them if they watch a guy score a touchdown and they look out the window and it's almost dark, and then you look out the window and the sun is still there. That's kind of weird. And we're supposed to be living in the same country, enjoying the same things. It's kind of harder to do though if times are different between where I live and where they live. And aren't we all just basically starting off on the wrong foot if our starting point is, hey, we live in different time zones, so we have to do things at different times? That could lead to a lot of conflict. And there's just too much conflict in the world. We're on the brink of a nuclear disaster because of our differences and because we're always arguing about stupid things. Like, just the fact that people in other countries are doing things at different times. The second change I'd really like to see is a change in the way that the stock market is handled. The way it is now, it's way too focused on numbers. It seems to be like a weird obsession with them, actually. Like if you ever look at the way everything's listed is all about numbers, And if you're not much of a numbers or math person, it's kind of confusing. And I think that it probably deters a lot of people from ever investing in it. Because you look at it and it's intimidating when you see a bunch of numbers and you're like, shit, I'm terrible at math, you know? Way more people would get involved if they didn't have to deal with all that. I think it would reduce the income inequality in America too. It's mostly rich people doing the stock market, people who are really good at math. And then poor people usually aren't good at math, and then they don't get involved in the stock market for that reason. So they should eliminate all the numbers, you know? Like, why can't you just buy stocks without having to crunch all these numbers, you know? You have to be like a math major to figure it out. It's kind of unfair in that way. And, you know, the more people that are involved in the stock market, the better it is for everyone, because that would just increase the amount of money in there. And, you know, a lot of people are just holding their money back from investments because of this. I know when I first started investing, you know, I almost decided not to do it because I saw all these scary numbers and I didn't understand it. But then luckily some parts of the stock market involve, you know, the names of the companies, and then the stocks have different letters. So I could tell, you know, what kind of stock I was going to be investing in for that reason. If it weren't for that, then I probably would have never done it. It's kind of like 80% numbers now and like 20% letters. It should be more 50-50 or even like 70-30, like 70% letters and then 30% numbers. Just think about how popular it would become if they did that. Third thing I wanted to talk about is weightlifting. If you've ever done weightlifting, you find out really soon that it's very daunting, because you have to go in there and just lift these heavy things over and over again. And it just seems like people are they're too in their own worlds, and they're busy like counting how many times they're lifting these things up and down. They're like, oh, I gotta do this bench press 15 times, and then I gotta do 3 rounds of that. So it should be less about just constantly moving these heavy things back and forth, and more about the vibe of the whole thing. More people would get into exercising and working out, and they would improve their health if they didn't go to the gym and have to just keep doing this over and over again. If instead people were, you know, you went there and you would encourage each other and compliment each other. And it was more focused on being friendly to other people and making friendships, and less about grunting and just like angrily lifting these things and putting them back down over and over again. And then, you know, the first thing that happens when you go to the gym is you just see all these really huge people that are really, really fit and strong. And they're kind of just glaring straight ahead at the mirror, looking at themselves. If the place were more welcoming, then way more people would get into it. So they should definitely focus more on the vibe of the whole thing. Because America has, there's an obesity epidemic in America. And just think about all the people that would be into weightlifting if they didn't have to worry about going to this really unwelcoming and hostile environment. If weightlifting had more of a reputation for camaraderie and friendliness and chill vibes, you'd see a huge increase in gym memberships. And that would be good for the economy too. And the fourth change that I'd really like to see is, I watch a lot of nature documentaries, right? And I'd really like to see more animals farting in them. I think that would make it a lot more realistic and make me feel closer to animals. I think in that respect, they're not really very realistic if you think about it. They never show things like that in a nature documentary. They always try to make a story out of the thing, like, oh, look at the mama bear and her cubs, and she has to get them across the mountain or something like that. But I don't even think the bears are thinking about that. They're like, oh, we have to get to the other side of the mountain. It's just something that happens over time as they're looking for food and traveling. They end up on the other side of the mountain. That wasn't their goal, I don't think. I don't think they think that way like humans do. But if it were more just about their everyday lives, and if it zoomed in on a bear ripping a fart, that'd be way more interesting, I think. And also I'm curious what their farts sound like too. It would probably make me feel closer to them, and I'd be more interested in conservation and things like that. if I just felt that they were less like these mythical creatures that you see on television and more like normal living things that just shows the similarity between all the living species on the earth, instead of trying to make them seem like, furry humans that they're documenting. I guess that could kind of make us feel closer to them in a way, but it's kind of a lie. I don't want to think of them as being just like us, except that they're hairy and they live in the mountain. I want to feel closer to them because I know that they're different from me, but yet they're similar in their bodily functions and things like that. I don't think I've ever seen a nature documentary where they show that. And if you've seen something like that, please let me know about it, because I'm really curious to see that. I think one thing that might be hard about it is capturing the sound of it. You might have to get special mics that pick up that kind of sound. I know I've heard animals like making grunting and growling noises, or hissing, or scratching, or running, but it might be hard to capture quieter sounds like when they're yawning or burping or whatever. They could figure out a way to do that. I would really like to see that, or maybe just hear it, or actually see it and hear it. That's actually a really good idea for a nature documentary, is one focused on the sounds that animals make. And I don't mean like just the beautiful sounds they make, like whale songs or birds chirping. I want to hear even the really nitty gritty sounds that they make, like when they're pooping or peeing, or when they're having sex, and of course when they're farting. Those are the kinds of sounds that I would like to see highlighted in one nature documentary. I think that would make for a really good show, and it's a really interesting concept that a lot of people could really get into. So that rounds out my list of changes I'd like to see in the world that I think would improve it and make it a better place. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my ideas. Let's get a discussion started on this. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.